I'm Mrs. Baquero, and I teach U.S. history here at Vista.
And I am Mrs. Hillesland, and I teach AP English Language along with Mrs. Baquero. So, do you remember when you called me and decided we were going to go do this march?
I do. We were in the car, and it was about a week after the election, and the march was just getting started then. There was a little bit of buzz about it, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I really want to be at this, and there would be nobody else I'd want to be at this march with besides you, and I knew you'd be game.
Yeah, and I was just so into the idea of I want to make sure that women let the country know we're in this and we have a voice. And it seemed like some of what we were trying to get across was being pushed aside during the election in a lot of ways from a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. So I felt like this was a chance for us to get out there and make sure that women's issues are known.
I agree. I remember being really worried that first week after the election that, oh my goodness, there are going to be people and organizations who are going to be very vulnerable under a Trump administration. And I wanted to be there to be one tiny part, one little voice for those people I was so concerned about. Environment, like you said, women, gay rights, Muslims. I just remember being so worried that I thought I need to be out there and help be a voice.
Yeah, and I think what really brought me to the forefront is just picking up the Feminist Club this year. Those girls are so, getting ready to go out and to, change the world. And I don't think people remember that it was in my lifetime that women actually got the right to be in a jury box. 1973. That was in my lifetime.
Right.
I don't think we remember how short it has been since women have been allowed to decide who they marry within the last 50 to 100 years is all.
Yeah.
And, my mom became a nurse instead of a doctor because that's what women do, even though she was smart enough to be a doctor. Right. And there's just so many things that I think a lot of people, because we live such short lifespans, we don't remember
realize,
and how unique this is.
Right. Well, even my own mother, when she worked for Folsom Cordova Unified School District as a teacher, she was pregnant with me, and she was forced to resign. You actually had to quit your job. You didn't take maternity leave. You quit, and then you hoped that they would rehire you. And yeah, certainly they did most of the time, but you had to quit your job when she was pregnant with me. So you're right. We forget that those rights had to be fought for. And
it wasn't until the mid-70s or 80s that we ended up with spousal support or anything like that. The woman always stayed home, so if her husband left her and she didn't have a job, she was just out of luck.
Out of luck, yeah.
And that's what scares me about just even words like make America great again. When are we going back to? Like, that's what I worry about. As a woman, I'm not in the founding documents. It says all men are created equal. So if we get back to the foundation, there's a chance I won't be in there. And that frightens me. I mean, there's so many things where I think people just sort of forget. So that's why I marched with the idea of women in mind. Mm-hmm. But then all the other issues as well, like immigration. Yeah. Immigrants make our country what it is. All of our doctors, our engineers.
Right. Well, my husband
right?
is an immigrant. He's a first generation. My grandparents were all first generation coming. So, of course, that scares me. And then the other part of it, too, is when I think about why did I march? Well, I'm a teacher of U.S. history. Like, historically, we have always marched mm-hmm. to get the attention of our government to demand things that needed to be changed. We've done it with Vietnam. We did it with civil rights. We did it with women's suffrage. This is what we do. This is a beautiful piece of our history that we march to get what we need. And so it
made sense for us.
It made absolute sense to be there, for sure.
And being there with you and knowing, just what you bring. Every time we go to D.C. together, you bring such knowledge of the history of it. So it was neat to be there to hear, just to see the buildings and to think about the history of our country and to, we got to see Trump's inauguration. We got to watch Obama fly away and just to see mm-hmm. that peaceful transition of power, which is so beautiful and wonderful about our country.
Yeah.
So to be there historically was important too. But also just just being there and feeling, there was no violence that day. There was no,
It was beautiful.
Talk about like how packed in it was. How many humans?
It was like sardines. I mean, you even said there was a point we were so crammed in there it felt a little dangerous. It was so full, but not. And people were so kind to each other and just generous with their words, and it was all so very peaceful.
And I've never seen diversity like I saw diversity that day.
Yeah, you're right.
Every human being.
Yeah, I've never been in a more diverse setting, from 2-week-olds to 90-year-olds being pushed in.
42,000 people who were in wheelchairs and walkers, and people who have disabilities were there. It was the biggest conglomeration of disabled people that we've ever had in our country, which I did not know that marched.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
it was an amazing sisterhood that day. I walked away. It gave me strength for what I thought was going to come and what did come. I mean, it started that day, and it has been since then.
There's been marches every day.
Every day, and it inspired me to keep working, to make phone calls, to send postcards. And while I've always been politically aware in my adult life, I wouldn't say I've been active. I've never been active the way I've been today, and that march inspired me to do that.
And I feel like I'm active. I write Congress a lot. I write my congressional leaders. I make phone calls a lot, just because there's some issues like plastic in the environment that I really care about.
Yeah.
And that's one big one, is the environment. And I worry, you're hearing rumblings of diminishing the EPA's power and things like that, and that kills me. But I also... But what it made me do is engage. I've joined a couple groups now where we're going and listening to Ame Vera speak and talking to him about what we want. And we're I'm just getting more active, like you said. And I think that's an important thing for an American citizen to do.
Right.
It's our right.
Well, and to model for our kids, too.
Yes.
We talk about civic education and being participatory in this democracy. And so I think it's, it's a good role model for the kids to see that the adults in their lives are doing it, putting their money where their mouth is.
No matter on what side of political spectrum you stand, is to be engaged.
Right.
To be civic minded, I think, is so important.